If you want to save money and DIY your braids, this is the video for you. Today, I'm going to show you how I prep, part, and install my Boho Knotless braids. Let's get into the hair that I'm going to be using. It's from Eayonhair, and I got the 20-inch natural black color bulk deep wave hair. That was a mouthful, and it was thick from root to tip, which is good because that way you know that your bundle is going to be good quality. As for my braiding hair, I'm using freetress braid in 1B. Now it comes with 4 bundles in the pack, and I also got the shortest length that I could find, which is like 38 inches, I believe. As for my tools, I'm using my IBH precision ruler comb, as well as the styling clips. I have about 6 of them. And for my products, I'm using Lock-In and Shine and Jam in the red bottle. For my setup, I'm using a tri-mirror that I ordered from Amazon, and I'm just placing it on these hooks that I have on the wall. And I'm also using a mirror that's directly in front of me, that way I can get a full view of my head. Here I am, looking crazy. Moving on to prepping the hair, so I'm taking my braiding hair and I'm going to be putting it on my braiding rack here. This is from Joann's Fabrics. It was about $20-ish, $25, and I spray painted it pink because I love pink, of course. And I'm separating my braiding hair into small pieces, and I'm going to fill up 1/2 of my rack. Now you don't want your pieces to be too big or too bulky because in your braid it's just not going to be as seamless as possible. So I like to do small pieces, and I'm filling up the left side of the rack. On the right side of my rack, I'm going to be separating my bulk hair, so you can see that this hair does not have a weft at the top, so you can easily pull it apart. So I'm also doing small pieces of this hair, and I'm placing it on the little pegs. So for this hair, as I'm racking it and pulling it apart, I'm also using my pinky finger on my other hand to grab the little bit of excess hair that's at the base. Now the reason for this is because those hairs toward the top aren't as long as the rest of the curly hair. So for me, I prefer to kind of just get rid of the excess hair so that there's no shedding with this style, and here is a little ball of hair left over. Let's get into the parting. So I'm starting by going straight down the middle, and I'm using my parting chart for my medium parting. So if you guys are not aware, I do have parting charts that are super helpful when it comes to determining however many rows that you want to do for this style. So for me, I wanted to do medium-sized rows. So this means that we're going to have 6 rows in total. But first, I'm going to start off by parting my hair into 6 sections, just so it can make it a lot easier for me to see what I'm doing. So how I get my parts really clean and crisp is to 1, make a rough draft part, 2, apply my gel directly onto the part, and then 3, repart on top of it. So that way I'm making sure that all my hairs are on either side of the part and that there's no hairs crossing over. And that's really the key to getting clean parts, is just to make sure that there is no hairs crossing over that line. Now, when doing your own hair and using this tri-mirror, you kind of have to work backwards. So something that I really think helps me is kind of turning my head in the direction that I'm parting. You can see I'm like slightly turning my head while I'm parting instead of just having my hand do all the work. I feel like it kind of gives me a little bit more control and just helps me figure out my way around it. It is a little bit difficult at first to get used to. You see, like, my neck is like broken and my focusing face is horrendous, but it takes some time to get used to working backwards and getting your parts to look how you want it to look. But of course, with time and practice, it definitely becomes a lot easier once you get used to it. So here you can see I have my 6 parts, and now we're ready to start parting out our rows. Moving on to rows number 1 and 2, these are going to be towards the nape of my neck, right below my ear, and I'm just going to split that section in half horizontally to get the first and second row. Then to separate each section from each other, I'm just putting it in a little braid just to keep it out of the way. You can also use a clip or a rubber band, whatever you prefer, but I just wanted to put it in a little braid. And then I'm repeating the same thing on the other side. You want to make sure that the point where your two lines meet in the middle actually match up, so that way your rows are straight all the way across. And now I'm going upward to do my other 4 rows. So instead of doing my row all the way around, I like to part out my mini row, if you will, for this section, and that way I can just make sure that they're spaced out the way that I want before I go back in and finish the entire row around my head. So here I'm just making sure that they're evenly spaced out, and I'm applying that gel and then reparting my section. Now, for me, this sizing medium was perfect because, y'all, sometimes when my braids are too small, my hair is really fine. So those smaller braids tend to be too much tension on my strands and then cause my hair to break off. So this medium is a perfect size for somebody who wants that like non-large braid look, but also their hair is very sensitive and it can't take too much attention. So for me, medium is perfect, and for me that requires 6 rows. Then again, if you're somebody who maybe has a longer neck nape, or your head shape might be a little bit different, you might be able to accommodate 7 rows. But for me, 6 is the magic number. So here you can see I have my 6 rows, and once I'm happy with how the spacing is, then I go in to the other sections of my head and line up the rows. So this did take about 40 minutes or so to do, which is not too bad in the grand scheme of things. But if you're new to DIYing your hair, it might take you a little bit longer, and that is okay. The number one thing that I preach is patience, y'all. Please do not rush the process, because that is the easiest way to get frustrated and then just give up altogether. So to avoid that, I like to give myself some grace and patience and just vibe out. I have some TV on the screen next to me. I usually watch like a documentary or like a podcast, something to just, you know, entertain me while this is happening. I also left out some of my edges just so that they're not like snatched up. And once I did one side, I went ahead and did the other. Here is the final product of pre-parting. Alright, so admittedly, this is 2 days later after I pre-parted those sections. So if you see that my hair is a little bit frizzy and the parts aren't as crisp, that is why, because your girl had things to do, okay? And I just threw on a hat. Okay, girl, and that's that. So we're going back in 2 days later to now braid my hair, but the same exact parting is the same. So I'm starting off in the first row. I'm going to create 4 boxes. Now this also aligns with my chart as well. So these 4 boxes at the bottom are going to be the base of our first row. So let's get into how we're going to do a knotless braid. If you haven't seen my detailed video on how I install them without the boho, check that out right here. But we're going to do it again here. So I'm starting off by splitting my piece into 3 even sections, and I'm just making sure that there are no flyaway hairs getting caught in there. And now I'm taking my right hand, and that's going to be holding that rightmost piece. I'm going to go underneath that middle piece with my index finger, rotate the middle to now go underneath and grab the right side. Now here is where I'm going to add in my braiding hair. I'm just going to add it in between my fingers that are pinched here, my index and my thumb, and then I'm going to align my natural hair with the leg of the braiding hair. Use my middle finger to attach it to my scalp right there, and now go underneath that middle piece. Now I'm going to continuously repeat this pattern and add in braiding hair. Now as for how many pieces of braiding hair that I'm using about 6 to 8 pieces. I don't really count how many pieces I'm adding in. I kind of just go based off of vibes. Like, I wanted my braids to not be so bulky, so I kind of just added in braiding hair until I felt like the braid was the size that I wanted. And that is the advice that I would give beginners or intermediate braiders or people doing their own hair. Like, just add in the hair until the braid is the size that you want. Each braid is gonna have a slightly different number depending on how thick or thin the hair is in that spot. So I just like to go based off of vibes, which is the best way. So I'm braiding down, and as I'm braiding down, once I get about like 2 inches or so, I then switch my hand positioning to a more comfortable position, and I kind of flip my work around, and then I'm adding in a bit more braiding hair. I like to go ahead and just check to see if the base of my braid isn't bunched up, and it wasn't. So I continued braiding down, and now I'm adding in my boho hair. So here I'm placing that straight piece that's toward the top of the hair. I'm adding it in there and braiding it into my braid. So one side is going to be extra longer than the other, and that smaller section is going to be tucked away, and the longer section I'm going to pull it out of the braid and place it toward the top of my head. Oh, it fell down, but you get the point. A lot of people might use clips to clip it out of the way, but I kind of just place it to the side and move it out of the way. As for how many pieces I'm adding, I'm using about 4 to 5 pieces per braid. And then I'm also using 2 curly pieces at the bottom so that I have that little curl. So the more boho hair that you add, the thicker the style is going to be. And I know I've seen a lot of boho styles where there's just a little too much boho for me personally. So I like to keep it at that number just so that it gives it enough curly hair, but not too much. I'm very much in the game of not having styles that are not too bulky, too thick, too artificial looking. So I definitely like a more natural approach. So 4 to 5 pieces throughout the braid, and then 2 pieces at the bottom is like the perfect boho formula for me. As I'm braiding down and they don't reach the top anymore, they kind of keep falling. So that's what you see me struggling with here. You can definitely use a clip, or you can be like me and just put it in between your lips. Depends on how you feel, but this was just easier for me. Like, I don't care. And then at the bottom, I'm adding in 1 piece of boho hair to one side, braiding down 1 rotation, and then adding in another piece on the other side. So once that's done, you're going to have 2 sides that have boho and 1 piece that's not going to have boho. And to get a piece there, I'm going to split a piece of the curly hair in half and just add it to that section that didn't have any curly boho hair in it, and then continue braiding down. You can see the pain in my eyes because this is only the first braid out of all of them and I was already tired. So if you know, you know. Here's where I added a small knot using the boho hair. I just wrapped it in a little loop and then pulled the hair through the loop to create a knot, and then pull down on it. Boom. Perfect. And now we're on to the second row. Now y'all, when they say that boho knotless braids take longer than the regular, believe them, okay? Because it definitely takes more time to do those little pauses and add in the hair. Like, this definitely took me about 3 days in total, and I did like sessions of maybe 4 hours each, so it gets there. For this second row, I am doing a brick layered pattern, so that means that my boxes are going to be staggered. If you're new to this channel, let me explain. So you don't want your boxes to line up directly on top of each other because it'll give your look a very scalpy vibe. If you want to go for that, by all means, but I like to make sure that my braids are falling directly on top of the part, so that way you can just see less scalp and it has more of a full effect to it. Alright, y'all, here is where I was really in the trenches, alright? I had took an absurd amount of breaks and I was walking outside with dookie braids in my head, boho knotless on the bottom half, looking crazy. So I really had to tap in at this point and just grind it out and get it done, okay? I was lucky that it was daylight outside. When you're parting out your boxes, you want to make sure that they're even as possible, going along the row. And it might not be a perfect square, but that's okay. Some of them might be more rectangular than perfect box, just as long as they visually look okay going horizontally across the rows and that they're staggered, brick layered. So I feel like making sure that those two things are happening definitely make it look visually pleasing overall. And I like to start towards the middle of my head and then part going outward towards my ear. Make sure that you're leaving enough room for those boxes right directly on your edges. You do not want those boxes to be too small because that means that there's just going to be a lot of tension there, and we want to keep our edges. Alright, so make sure that those boxes are good size. I usually make them slightly bigger than the rest of the boxes just to preserve my baby hairs. Alright, we're going to do a second demo of how I do my knotless braids. You can definitely follow this. It's not mirrored. So I'm taking my right hand that's holding my rightmost piece, and I'm going to be going underneath that middle piece and grabbing the left side. And then taking my new middle piece and rotating it, and then going underneath and grabbing the right side. So now I'm going to be adding in my braiding hair. Again, I'm just adding in pieces until it's a similar size to the braids around it. Why tax our mental on counting how many pieces of braiding hair that we're adding? Because honestly, y'all, I don't know. I don't know how many pieces. I'm just adding them in there until I feel like it's a good size. And I'm also just making sure that I'm paying attention to how it feels, because here at this point where I am at the top of my head, I can see what I'm doing, but also if I focus too much on the visual in the mirror, it can kind of trip me up. So I just like to make sure that I'm being really intuitive with my hands and just feeling around the braid. And sometimes I will dare say that sometimes my braids come out better when I'm not looking. So do with that information as you will, but I just like to make sure that I'm focusing on the braid, that I'm not doing too many things while trying to braid my hair, because then the braid will come out wonky. So also another thing that I want to add, your hair might be longer than mine. Mine's a little bit shorter because I did big chop not too long ago, and my hair is the healthiest it's been in a while, which is great. But it did take me a little bit longer to kind of like tuck my hair into the braid. So depending on how long or short, or if your ends are bluntly cut or not, is it gonna take you to do this style. When you have bluntly cut ends, you kind of have to tuck them in there, and you'll kind of see as I'm braiding down that I'll add my gel at the end of my hair just so that I can slick it into the braid. And I'm also not adding in that boho hair until I get past the section where my natural hair ends. If you've made it this far into the video, let me know down below in the comments if you've ever DIY'd your own hair, if you currently do it, and what's your favorite style to do. For me, I'm loving these boho knotless. Like, this was actually the first time that I did them on myself with human hair. Would you believe that? Because I do so many of this style on my clients. I do it every week, and I had yet to do it on myself, so I love them. Top tier. And I'm saving so much money because even as a braider who, you know, charges, I think, decently good pricing for myself, I don't want to spend that much money doing my own hair. So I will literally fight tooth and nail to DIY my own hair to save money and to just, I think it's just fun. So let me know down below in the comments if you do your own hair and what is your favorite style to do on yourself. So on the top here, I kind of go for 6 boxes in total, which match the number of rows that I have overall. So everything kind of lines up perfectly for me, and I just like to make sure that, again, those top boxes or the boxes closest to my edges are just not so small, just so that they're not being snatched. So while I was finishing up, I was just thinking about how I think everybody should have access to the information to be able to do their own hair. And I know that it's starting to become more popular due to inflation and the rising prices of everything, including luxury beauty services. So I do think that doing your hair as a DIY is a great option for somebody who's on a budget, or if you just want to try it out. I love doing my own hair. It kind of allows me the creative freedom to try different colors, different styles, without having the commitment of paying a high price just for me not to really like it that much. So if you are new to my channel, I have a whole playlist of DIY styles. I've been braiding my hair for quite a minute now, literally since high school. So, and definitely since starting my YouTube channel, I've made countless videos on a whole bunch of different DIY styles. So if you're interested in that, definitely check out the playlist listed here. I have styles from crochet to braiding to twist to passion twist to cornrows, like you name it, it's there. Actually, I think I need to do like a cornrow, an updated one on myself. But if you guys have any suggestions that you want me to try out DIY style wise, definitely let me know down below in the comments. I love hearing your suggestions and taking them into consideration when it's time to film. So lastly, finishing up this last braid, I'm going to show you how I add the ends. I'm adding in that one piece on one side, braiding down about a rotation, and then adding in another piece to the other side. And then once I have 2 pieces in there, I'll braid down, and you'll notice that the third leg does not have a piece of boho hair. So I'll just borrow a piece from my other strand to even everything out and then continue braiding down. To make a knot at the end, I'm making the shape of a number 4 or backwards 4, and then I'm looping it around itself and then pulling the hair through that loop. And I'm doing this about 2 to 3 times, and then I'm going to be showing you guys how I dip the braids in hot water to seal everything in. Okay, so y'all, bear with me. It's a little bit blurry, but here I am separating out the curls from the braids because I don't like dipping my human hair curls, even though they're not synthetic and they won't straighten out all the way. I do feel like it alters the curl pattern. It kind of like heat damages it a little bit. So I move them out of the way and I dip just the ends of my braid. Now, some of the human hair might get caught in the mix there, but at least it's just not being directly dipped into the hot water. And then that way it seals my braids in place and it causes the hair to not unravel. And I'm just going to be putting it in those sections just to keep it apart. And I'm doing about 4 sections in total. I just split my hair in half and then split that in half, but I separate out the curls, dip the braids, and this is the only way that I seal my knotless boho braids. Some people use glue, but I actually hate using glue because it gets all over my fingers and then it might get on clients' hair and it's just not a good experience. So I definitely enjoy doing this method. And then finally, I'm following up and spraying the curls with some water just to give it a little bit of moisture. And this is the final result of my boho knotless braids. If this video was helpful, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you're looking for a new style, check out these DIY Yankee twists that I did a while back.